Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Proc-N-Roll, your guide to practical procurement, where we make procurement rock and roll. We've got Natasha, the pro CPO, from IBM to McKesson to Salesforce to Nike, now the founder and CEO, one of the greatest consultancies in procurement, Candor Procurement, enabling transformation results for some of the world's top procurement teams. And we've got Conrad, our in-house innovator, from Intel to Adobe, and now the founder and CEO, one of the hottest procurement startups, Graphite. And you've also got myself, Zach, your expert on all things procurement. And we join you with almost 73 years of practical procurement experience. And today's episode is all about the future skills required in procurement. I think it's a really exciting time for our profession. I don't know how you feel, but procurement is changing. It's changing a lot, right? And I think we've covered so much of those changes in the past. We've talked about the move from savings to, value. We've also talked about, this focus on again, savings is also shifting towards customer service and, being fast and speed. And, I find it a really exciting time because the priorities are shifting, our KPIs are shifting. I think more broadly in the business, procurement is being recognized as a value creator, beyond just driving savings. And procurement have recognized that, our biggest challenge has been our narrow focus on savings and that we really need to be customer-oriented business. So, it's only natural that skills are going to evolve as the procurement organization evolves. I guess, how do those skills evolve? Let's go through it from different roles. Okay, let's start with a CPO role, right? Natasha, you have a lot of experience there. How do you see the CPO role evolving in terms of the skill sets that CPOs need to manage procurement of the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for the leaders of procurement organizations, CPOs or head of procurement, however they're called, I think that the big emphasis is still on inspiration and an ability to move business forward, and it comes in both ways. So inspiration for the team is very important because organizations are going through massive changes, and the change can be like moving organizations from the low level maturity, like technological maturity, operational maturity, to higher level, or it can be embracing enterprise-wide full AI automated solutions. But I think from my perspective, inspiration comes into focus and importance on working with your internal procurement team first, and helping people being able to connect your vision and importance of all technological development that is happening around us on an ongoing basis. So inspire your team to be part of it and encourage them to be part of it, but also being a great catalyst of a change within the organization. I think CPOs will continue to spend 70% of their time on sales, selling their vision, selling their strategy, selling the necessity to move forward. Now more than ever, I am observing many companies that where leadership is recognizing that their procurement functions have been significantly undervalued, underinvested into, underappreciated, and therefore they're not generating the degree of value that is expected from them. So I think that the role of the CPO as a salesperson will continue bringing up, like, shining the light on the necessity of changes that procurement is driving and explaining it organization-wide why these changes are important, and inspiring their team on to being those change agents.
That's super interesting, Natasha, because I look at CFO tracks. And when I hear people in finance talk about, how they want to make it CFO, a lot of them talk about the importance of earning that seat at the table, right? And it's exactly through kind of what you're talking about. It's through the influence, through articulating the value and bringing the top teams together, right? And just making sure you're embedded in the business. Do you see that skill set shifting then in terms of specific skills, like influencing skills? Is that going to become more important, the same? Or is it just what you're influencing or what you're selling that's changing as opposed to the skill itself of selling?
If I can jump in, I would say, and maybe my definition of leadership generically is somebody that can see where you need to be and then can, lay out the path to get there. And I think, it's probably just slightly different wording to the same kind of thing that Natasha's talking about. That laying out the path to get there for your internal team, that inspiration, laying out, like helping the stakeholders, helping the organization see where we need to be, where we can be, and laying out the path to get there. But as we kind of enter this phase of massive technology transformation, expectations changing, to be in a leadership role where you're trying to predict the future when the future's moving kind of slow is a little bit different than what it feels like today. The leadership is trying to make decisions of, do I hire somebody that can create agentic AI for my organization? What do I do with my tech stack? How do I, all of these things are just, it feels to me, and Natasha, I'd be curious because you're talking to a lot more of these people about these topics, these leaders than I am right now. But I just have a sense that things are accelerating so quickly that the successful CPOs are going to be the ones that can actually navigate at speed, like do the same leadership things, but be able to digest a whole bunch of ambiguity and uncertainty and crystallize it enough. Because by the way, if you're like, hey, we're going to go here. Nope, that's not right. We're going to go here. And then we're going to go here. Like the credibility that you have with your team and your stakeholders is really bad as well. So some of that needs to be, some of the future predictions need to be buffered enough that you're not herky-jerky, like you're actually moving generally in the right direction.
But to you and Natasha's point, Conrad, like, doesn't that require really deep technological experience, knowledge, because I think Natasha alluded to it. You almost need to connect up your procurement function technologically with the rest of the business. And this is something that I'm seeing today with clients. For example, in the case of agentic AI, a lot of clients are thinking about, do I buy in a specialized tool, that really focuses on that, like a point solution? Or do I use one of my enterprise tools that are available? That could be something like ServiceNow, it could be one of Microsoft's AI platform, and so I think almost you really got to know and be involved in sort of the tech strategy shaping the overall business, so you can really make sure procurement is in that stack, fully integrated. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think, I was listening to a podcast earlier, and this was a Secret Service agent that was watching many presidents do their work. And one thing I thought she said that was really interesting was, these presidents don't know everything. They can't know everything. They're making big decisions, and you've got to get comfortable making decisions without knowing everything, which means I don't think the skill is you've got to become some unicorn genius that can understand every nth degree of the technology. Although I do think it will move most leaders in that direction. To me, it comes down to kind of learning and surrounding yourself and getting advice from the right people. I mean, you're gonna have to make decisions on what trends and topics and experts you're going to allow to guide your own views and your own decisions, and those kind of just like, who am I going to believe and what am I going to track and follow is going to become hugely important, because there's no way you can keep track of it all.
I would like to add to that I think as a CPO, we're still staying focused on CPOs, is that when your team brings you up, when you're assessing the organization, whether because you just stepped into the role or because your scope is changing, for whatever the reason, but if you're going through the assessment, or if you already know where your gaps are, and if you say if you realize that, okay, I have $100 million in tail spend that is not addressed at all. Like nobody's sourcing it. We don't have enough resources. We will never get enough headcount. And frankly, if the transactions are between $50,000 to $100,000, they don't have to be sourced. But at the same time, if they add up to $100 million, it has to be addressed. So you have to be knowledgeable enough what solutions exist at the tail markets, at the tail spend market. And you have to know the difference between autonomous negotiation and repetitive bidding, right? And you don't have to do the first round of analysis and, let's say, look at 5 applications and make determination which one to go through. But when your team brings you 2 solutions and say, we can go this way, we can go this way, you have to be knowledgeable enough to ask the right questions. What problems will it solve? How easily it will integrate with our systems? What do we anticipate to be the adoption rate? What is the risk? Can I do different currencies? Will the marketing department accept it as a tool? How will it connect to existing systems? Is there a better option on the market? What's going to happen in 2 years with this tool? Will we still need it, or it will be fully automated? So you have to be knowledgeable enough about the subject, but you don't have to know how it works on the back, right? Like if I know that I need, if I have a lot of data, but my reporting is still garbage, then I know I need to put this in a solution that exists today, that will analyze all the data, clean it, categorize it, and help me to get to better reporting. And in parallel, maybe will give me the right benchmark. So I think the level of technological savviness is important, but I also don't want the CPOs who are not technologically savvy and don't consider themselves techies like me to be intimidated by that, because we just need to understand, I think, the problem-solving skills and ability to comprehend information and ability to zoom out and look at the entire procurement landscape from a slightly higher level. I think that remains to be very relevant and important quality for CPOs, because they don't need to know ins and outs, but they need to have an ability to identify what area of the business needs help and then how to choose the right help.
So listen to your team basically when they come to you with the problem and the solution. I mean, your team are meant to find those critical details, right? You as a CPO are meant to listen, consider it, ask good questions, and yeah, that makes perfect sense. And sorry, Conrad, were you going to say something?
Well, Natasha said something that I absolutely loved there. I think you guys tell me if this has happened to you, but I've worked for a handful of leaders who, when I go present a proposal or I'm talking to them, they have this uncanny ability to ask the question, almost the question that I didn't want them to ask. It's sort of like, it's almost magic. Like no matter what they're talking about and no matter what I'm presenting, they can just like Natasha, like they can zoom in on the things that matter. And I don't know what to call that. I don't know if it's intuition. It's almost like a good coach the same way. They can help you tremendously without knowing the answer to give you. And hopefully they hold back often from giving you the answer, but they know the questions to ask. And that intuition about how to get the most out of the people that know the most information and uncover maybe blind spots in their thinking, and which is, it's a real, I don't know if there's a class to go figure that out. Is it's just wisdom or what it is, but those are amazing leaders.
It's not a skill, Conrad, is it? Like intuition? Is that something? It's kind of intuition sort of gained from experience and maybe, just character.
I would probably hear intuition, experience, and ability to think broadly. And I think it's just taking off your functional CPO hat and putting on the enterprise leader hat and think about the impact for the organization.
What about the level below that then? So you talk about CPO -1, so maybe director level. How does the emphasis change for a director? Do they need to be more technical? Do they need to have domain expertise in something? Or is it more of the same? So what's a future director of procurement or future senior manager maybe in procurement? What's expected of them?
I think I would put myself back in the CPO chair and all of this rapid change that's going on. The director that's going to fail with me is the one that keeps getting hung up on the next, like change. Like, yeah, we did that for 6 or 12 months. And now I'm saying, I need you to test something else, or let's try something, let's shift. And they're a little bit too fixated on, we're just a little bit into this, or like, I don't want to say that like we're jerking everything around, but things are going to change rapidly. And, a deeper understanding of the technology that Natasha's talking about, but also an absolute willingness and even enthusiasm around change. So as these things come around the corner very quickly, these people are the ones that are, because they're going to do so much of the work with retraining their people and, just implementing new systems. They're going to carry a lot of the work, and they need to embrace that instead of resist it. If they're resisting the speed of change, they're going to have to move to a side chair, and I'm going to have somebody in there that can embrace change instead of resist it.
Yeah. I will double click on that I really would like to see directors and senior directors and senior managers, whatever the titles are, but kind of mid-level management and the higher level management, to focus on their teams. I think that they all need to come up with gamification plan on how we're going to make this influence and impact in the most in the way what the people resist the least, right? Because again, for younger generation, this is the specific. They grew up with the phones in their hands, right? For older generation, that is still very critical in the workforce. It may be a little bit more challenging to kind of like a step in and lean in on these technological solutions. But even for younger generation, to bring technological advancements into everyday reality is it's a new way of doing business. And I think that mid-level management has to be very creative in how we're going to engage the teams into building their own agents, right? How do you create a competition on, let's say, the month of October will be the month of identifying AI biases. Like every day, everyone has to identify one bias. And then we as a team will vote at the end of the month which bias we think is the most controversial or detrimental to business outcome. Or do you remember when we had Mark Ruffin on Coin? He said that his monthly AI challenge was to, as a negotiation professional, how do you take no? And that he flew to San Francisco from Canada. He stopped by the pilot cabin and he asked, "Hey, can I please ride the plane?" And they said, "No." And he's like, "That's fine." He just needed, like, his challenge was to collect 5 no's every day, right? Create that for your team. Like through gamification, find a way to weave technology up into your team and stitch it to everyday tasks.
100% agree, Natasha. This new generation that's up and coming are all brilliant, but they do have a different idea of what work is, right? It's not 9 to 5. You clock in, you clock out, you sit there at your desk and you do your job. You need to make sure they're engaged. Also, people are working from home a lot of the time. So you want to make sure that engagement is high. You want to give people autonomy, but then you're right. You need to give them the tools. You need to have the tools and the skills to keep those connections, right? So that you're, I mean, that is definitely something that all functions need to contend with, especially procurement, I think. One thing I would add is, I think in addition to engaging your team, I think one thing directors and senior managers should be doing is looking at their hiring and just being a little bit bolder. And I've been encouraged by talking to some clients recently who have been doing this. Here's what I mean. Okay. If you had a JD for a procurement middle analyst, senior analyst or something like that, today, what would it include? It would include the usual stuff, influencing skills, being able to draft things. But I would say you need to almost expand that list. Why don't we hire people who have data science expertise or, data wrangling expertise, right? Or people who know how to code, coders, like actual coders. Why don't they sit inside procurement? And I think it's difficult because I think it's a pull factor. I think it's the fact that technology is becoming so ubiquitous, so important that I feel like these skills are being emphasized more. And it really is the case that procurement doesn't have enough people sometimes to make the best of the opportunities because they don't have that kind of skill set. Usually they have to turn to IT or some other business function. And while that can work, those people ultimately don't report to you. They don't live and breathe procurement. They're not inside your team. I would encourage a lot of people to look at hiring and make sure you're hiring. Look at hiring outside of your usual pools of procurement talent. See if you could bring in some more coding. And I feel like what will happen is once these people are in the team, what's the word? Not synergy, but there'll be a lot of back and forth and just, a lot of value created. Everyone learns from everyone else and basically diversity, right? And skill set. And I guess that really elevates your whole team. Yeah.
One of the best people I hired. Go ahead, Natasha. Sorry, you
Conrad. Go. I just wanted to comment that I don't know how Zach dares to say that there is some group of people that don't breathe and live by procurement. Who are these terrible people?
Honestly,
give me the names. We'll change the paradigm. Must be addressed. But you're absolutely correct. I love that you're bringing up the angle of recruiting differently. I didn't think about it before, but as we gradually going into the individual contributor population, you said coding. I am very interested in people who actually specialize in English and in philosophy, even without any procurement education, right? Because I think the importance of being very good in English or any language that is native to your country, where you're operating, is extremely important, because it's not just about how you structure the prompt, but what are you going to do with that information? Because ChatGPT is free. Everyone in the world can use it. The question is what you do with that. Because if your report will be 100% produced by ChatGPT without you weaving anything of your personal analysis, analytics, your personal take on it, if you're gonna put yourself in a position that 80% of your work is done by ChatGPT, rest assured, you're not going to have that position for a very long time. Because it's one of those instances when you create the environment yourself that ChatGPT will replace.
You automated yourself out of the job. Well done.
Exactly. They were greatly put. But if you use it as a tool that elevates your thinking and then brings it onto the next level, and you can create a greater impact, poof, then it's very powerful.
That's super, super interesting. I want to get Conrad's view on this, because I'd never thought of that, Natasha, as a skill, but you're absolutely right. I always used to think of prompt engineering as the actual skill. But what is prompt engineering really? It just means know your language, because every single word you put into that prompt will impact the outcome and the output of that agent, right? And that becomes more important when the agent makes decisions and needs to navigate. These things it's not raw intelligence. It's not actual general intelligence yet, even though Sam Altman might say it is. You still need to be very careful how you're prompting it. And I do think it's really important to know the words, the sequence of words, especially how to phrase certain things so you don't introduce bias into how the agent responds. So actually, yeah, it's prompt engineering, but more specifically, it's, your language skills. And one more thing I would build on that, Natasha, is the storytelling aspect of language as well, of like being really good at English. Is it's not just structuring your narrative, but like, I'll give you an example. When I work on a high level, very important presentation, as we all do, right? We spend hours looking at a slide with like 50 words on it, but we're constantly refining and finessing those words, because after you've spent all that time, your final result is definitely more impactful, because it just contains purely the information that's needed. It's clear, it's structured, and if someone is trying to absorb that information, it gives it to them in the most easily digestible, readable way. So I totally concur, and that's a great skill set to call out as well. Conrad, what's your view on this whole language thing?
Well, what was on my mind when you were talking about hiring people with different skills was back when I hired Aaron. He's a co-founder here at Graphite, but I hired him at Adobe. He was a software developer at Micron. Then he went back and got his MBA, and I hired him out of MBA to come and work for me on the procurement team. And I didn't do this intentionally, by the way, but this lines up with what you're saying. He showed up into our team, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put him in charge of the IT category, IT and engineering, because he speaks IT and engineering, right? That's the DNA of his career, which I think there's not a huge intellectual leap to say that's a good idea. But what became really interesting is, as we were trying to do things internally, I went to Aaron, because I can do basic programming and code and things like that. But I went to Aaron and said, hey, I'm trying to do this thing with this spreadsheet to make our operations more automated or work better. Can you do this? And he was like, yeah, that's no problem. I can do like VB code in an Excel spreadsheet and boom, 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 And that started this relationship of transformation and innovation between the two of us and with our team. That was a game changer for our organization.
Now you call him your co-founder, right? Like that shows you like how much value there was there in that particular case.
we proved that we could create amazing things together. But what I would say is, it's kind of hard to say I'm going to go hire like an IT person and put him into an HR category or one of these other things. But if your team is sizable enough, you need someone in IT, and it's very easy to justify getting somebody highly technical that can do the code, can understand it, can back to this idea of having enough people around you that can help you do the things that you can't do yourself. If you have an IT category manager, sourcing manager, somebody like that, and you haven't considered hiring somebody that can actually code, like you've just rotated somebody over from facilities into IT, like you're missing a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Conrad, I want to add to what you just said. In the past, like orthodoxical thinking about procurement is that it's either they need to generate savings, so they source, or they have to process POs. So it's kind of like tactical purchasing. But I think that one of the greatest benefit that procurement can generate for any business is to create seamless process. It's to make sure that people, that stakeholders, budget owners, everyone who buys any services or goods for their as part of their job, that they don't have to go through cumbersome and user unfriendly process. And when you have someone who can design the process, it has to be someone who, like, again, does not have to have deep technological needs, but need to have a vision of how to stitch together different pieces of technology, different pieces of process, different pieces of flow, and gift the organization, gift the enterprise with something smooth and effective and productive. And I know maybe one company out of 1,000 that where everyone working in the company would say that it's seamless. It works easy for us. We love our process.
Why do you think that is, Natasha? I've seen those teams. You know how some bigger procurement organizations have like a center of excellence, and that center of excellence, one of their main jobs is process mapping and streamlining processes and stuff like that. And always, you know what I find trips them up? It's this aversion to risk. right? It's almost like, hey, I need to build a process. Yeah, I want to make it as easy as possible for the customer, but I don't want to get in trouble because I didn't ask this. I don't want to get in trouble because I didn't have that. I don't want to get in trouble because so it's almost like you end up having a very long, convoluted processes because people don't feel like they have the authority or the responsibility to say, like, you know what, like, here's how we make a balanced sort of intake process, for example, right, for someone, because it's almost like procurement very risk averse, I find, especially, well, maybe my sector is financial services, so that makes perfect sense for me. Maybe other sectors is a bit different, but I feel that often trips up a lot of I would say maybe not skill, but maybe procurement should be a little bit more bold, a little bit more risk taking, a little bit more creative, and a little bit more empowering to team members to go out and actually try the things that'll really work. I think it's very difficult. How do you build a really great process that somehow satisfies
I'm thinking
everybody?
back to something Natasha said a minute ago about the stakeholder and the customer, and sort of being in a position where you really understand them. I've over 30 years, I've seen us pat ourselves on the back for creating a self-service nightmare for our stakeholders. You need to do this yourself. We're going to look like heroes by letting a couple of our people go. And now every engineer in the company has to spend 2 hours a month trying to figure out procurement. So, it's interesting because we're talking about how skills change in the age of AI. And I think there's sort of a list of what leadership and management and best practices look like that hasn't changed that much. A lot of what we're talking about is sort of, I don't know, like a universal principle of doing the right thing for the business in different ways that we're mentioning, right? Though I don't think those go away because AI shows up and brings new technology and brings new automation, the change management, the leadership, the customer, voice of the customer, focus on the customer. Like, we could probably look at what matters most to the CPO, the directors, and others, like pre-AI and post-AI, and it's probably going to be a closer list than everyone wants to believe, because it's just like good, true principles of leadership and management and performance.
Well, let me test that with you, Conrad. Okay, my last sort of test here. So let's take category management specifically. So category manager today, what do you look for in category manager? Someone who has deep category expertise, can really add value, understands the market, has relationships with suppliers, knows the contracts and everything to look for. AI can potentially do a lot of that, right? You can build an agent, feed it tons of like category knowledge and insights, and I don't think category management is seen as like an area that's easily given over to agents. But in the future, is category management like is that kind of knowledge? Is it going to be of the same value, more valuable, or less valuable with, for example, AI?
Okay, so here's my response. One of the very best people I ever hired was a finance person, had never done procurement, had never done software category management. I've referred to him before on the podcast here, I think. The IT director that told me not to hire him, after 6 months, was like, I want him on my team. And at the time, we kind of made this shift from, I'm going to hire somebody with, the technical skills of procurement, like procurement experience, or maybe even that category skill. I'm going to deprioritize that to what mattered most to us, which was the EQ, the people, and the soft skills. Remember the two lists I was talking about now? That's going to be on both of those. I agree with you. That's going to become more important because the person's going to be spending less of their time doing research and some of this other stuff. They'll be able to come up to speed really fast on the category. So, but that thing that really made them good, their ability to communicate with other people, to influence them, my number one hiring thing, I don't think changes for that person.
No, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think, Natasha?
I'm listening to you guys and I'm thinking that going back to the beginning of our conversation, that influence, impact, and empowering, which I called it inspiring, but those actually better words that you used through the episode, influence, impact, and empowering. these are no longer belong just to the head of procurement. These skills sit on every level. Because, first of all, I don't think procurement teams will grow much bigger than they are now. Even if organizations grow, I think procurement teams will start getting smaller, right? Not setting any fears, but the reality, right, of automation. So everyone will have a role to play in the food chain. And analyst and a manager or buyer, senior buyer can no longer think is just, I'm just going to do my little part. No, because responsibilities will grow. And as such, the ability and necessity to influence and impact will get much broader, and will get broader from the organizational visibility that procurement people will have. And frankly, I am hopeful that the companies will realize you cannot go with your guns blazing on AI if you don't have a PO system, or if half of your organization represents shadow procurement organization, or as I like to call them, hobby buyers, right? If you have to build the foundation, and everyone in procurement organization, regardless of the title, are carrying the torch of impact and influence and empowerment, regardless of the title.
I think what I'm getting here is like the human side of things is actually
more important than ever.
Yeah, it's more important than ever. And it's almost like an inverse of the technology trend. I feel like as technology becomes more ubiquitous, AI starts to do things. Social media is now everywhere. Everything is now, everyone communicates on video, even us. Like, it feels like people almost want to pull back, and these human skills are going to become more important. Things that technology can't do, I guess those become more emphasized, right?
Yes. Well, and the studies coming out lately are the people that use AI as a crutch start sounding like AI, right? So I think like not becoming the voice of AI and becoming like that relationship side setting, like it really needs, there's a lot of value there that needs to happen. I just got to share this really stood out to me when I was visiting a doctor a couple months ago, and he had no idea about all this cool AI stuff. I'm sure he had heard about it, but he hadn't tried deep research and things like that. I probably spent a half hour with him in the patient room, showing him things and telling him how he could use it. And through that conversation, we got to a place, because I believe that it won't be very long, and it's probably here already, that AI can like diagnose my conditions way better than a doctor can, right? Because the database is so much bigger. And then what good is the doctor for? Like, I don't really want AI telling me I'm going to die next week from cancer or next month or something like that, right? So it's easy to see in that environment that having all of this intelligence and knowledge, like in the AI, only can go so far. And then you have the people side of this where, we need to be the bridge between all of that and the people. So, the relationship and people side, which frankly, I don't think is a new trend. That's why one of the things I think is really interesting. But I do think it becomes more important. You're right. I think that as the AI grows, the importance of that relationship stuff becomes even more important.
Yeah. I mean, here's a bad analogy, but you know how the brain is like, I forgot what they're called. You got the front of your brain here that's like dealing with all the people and emotional stuff, and then your slow brain at the back, which is the more intelligence side of things. It takes, so the less this, the more this part is older, right? Like the emotional part, the human part, that's more important than the intelligence stuff in a way, right? Being able to connect with people and influence, etc. So, yeah, I guess to wrap up, I think what we're trying to say is people skills, right, are going to be more important than ever for procurement in the future. And lateral skills as well, Natasha, you said, looking across.
And thinking skills. Right? Don't take everything that machine spits out at the face value, because machines have biases. They've been trained by people.
Exactly. And people aren't machines at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Well, and these things they're statistical average sorts of things, right? That's this neural network that gives you the best average statistical answer back on something. I've been concerned, like, does that turn us all into average? Or, is general intelligence like so much better than the average? Like, is it general intelligence because across the whole scheme of everything, none of us are at that level, but it's still average for, we got to be better than average, right? And so we can't just embrace whatever it says, for sure.
And I guess it's the last skill then is be adaptable, right? Because this technology is going to evolve, and you don't know, in a few years' time where AI is going to be and what's, but yeah, I completely concur, Conrad.
I had also be courageous, because changes are coming, and so they're not coming, they're here. It doesn't matter which generation you belong to. It's natural human propensity to avoid the change. It's because there's uncertainty, there's lack of control. There's a medical term for that. It's called metathesiophobia, the fear of change. And you know that if there's a Latin word for that, it's a real deal. It's a real problem.
It's been happening a long time.
Yes. And I think that having the courage of running towards something that intimidates you, redesigning redesigning the processes, challenging, like, okay, well, the world is changing. I am not too old for that. I'm not too overqualified for this. I'm not underqualified for this. I am fitting right in when I need to be, and have a courage of keep driving the change, even in the environment that drives faster than you can drive the change.
Such an important point. Yeah. I think definitely we can end on courage to face change. That's really, really good insight. Thank you both. As always, I think it's super interesting. Cool. Well, thank you to all our listeners. Please drop us any comments or thoughts that you have. Would love to engage more with listeners and get some feedback. So thank you both. Thank you to everyone listening, and see you next time.
All right. Take care.
Soon. Bye.
Bye.